This video is intended to serve as an overview of the data cleaning process. We have a number of resources in this course for you. Before we go too much farther, you should read section 5.3 in the 2015 manual that concerns data cleaning. This is an overview video. There will be several more videos in this series on data cleaning. And the first community update homework assignment concerns data cleaning as well. And so you can look there. And there, as soon as you've made your good faith effort at the homework assignment, then you can look at see how other people have done it, and we can have some communication, some community communication about that. Data cleaning is a relevant topic, is a relevant, not irrelevant. It is a relevant topic, regardless of whether the data were recorded on paper forms, as we see here on the left, and entered via keyboard back in an office by data entry operators, or whether the data were collected on touchscreen devices like a smartphone or a tablet. Mistakes are possible in either method of collecting data, and so we would engage in a data cleaning step regardless of which method was used. Here's an overview of the workflow. We'll have more specific slides about each of these steps later, but briefly, we're going to check the values for correctness and completeness. We're going to write down our expectations about the variables, and then we're going to check our expectations. We're going to list responses that seem to have questionable values or disallowed values. When possible, we're going to go back and check the paper form or a photograph of the vaccination card to try to find should the corrected value be. And then we'll amend the data set to include the correction when possible. And when it's not possible, when we don't know what the value should be, then we'll need to have a consistent policy about whether we leave the errant value or do we replace it with the missing value in the data set. The first step in data cleaning is to consider literally every variable in the survey, every question in the survey, every variable in the data set, and to make a list of your expectations about that variable. Is it required? For instance, for every respondent, we have to know what stratum they were in. We have to know what cluster they were in. And many times, some of the questions are required. They're required to answer it. So we should check for every required response, there shouldn't be any missing values. If there are, that's an issue we have to look at. For categorical responses, many questions only have a few possible answers. Yes, no, I don't know. So let's look at those questions and see whether there were any other responses recorded. And if so, then we need to go and have a careful look at those. Were the skip patterns in the survey observed correctly? If the respondent said that they have never smoked at all, then did they later answer questions about how many cigarettes, saying that they'd smoked 5 cigarettes per day? Why were those later questions asked if they should have been skipped? So were the skip patterns observed correctly? And then in cases where the data are double entered, as is our recommendation, did the two data entry operators enter precisely the same value for every response for every respondent? For which ones did they disagree? And let's go have a look and correct those values. Once you've made a list of the expectations, then you write a program using the tool of your choice to identify and list the observations that don't meet the expectations that need to be checked. And this can be quite a process. A thorough review will involve one or more checks, probably for every variable in the data set, or certainly for most of them. When your program finds a value that's not allowed or is inconsistent with other responses, then you make a list then of the responses, the respondents and the responses that you need to go and check. I typically put this list in a spreadsheet because I'm going to want to sort it. Some respondents may have several fields that look questionable. And so when I go and pull the paper form for respondent 62749, I want to know that on that paper form, I need to check 3 different variables, 3 different things that look questionable. So a spreadsheet is a handy way to make this list and to maintain it. In the spreadsheet, I can also provide a column where I can note the correct response if I find it when I go looking for it. And then I have to provide a process for taking that corrected response and amending the data set to put it back in there, to replace the bad value with the corrected value. In some cases, the field workers will be able to correct the values on the tablet, say in the field, and resubmit the record. If that works well, that can be great, but that's a process you want to test, because if it doesn't work well, you might wind up with duplicate records and records that disagree, and later it might be difficult for you to tell which was the corrected record and which was the bad record. One practice we want to avoid altogether is having the data manager open up the data set, navigate to the cell that has the bad value in it, and simply overwrite that by typing in the corrected value by hand. That's a process that's prone to errors. If you're off by one row or column, you're going to mess things up. And it's also difficult to remember or keep track later how many things were corrected for which records. It doesn't leave a good paper trail. So we want to write a program that will substitute the corrected value in the data set, and then the program serves as a documented record of which values were changed. And then finally, there will be some values, in some cases, where you'll never know the correct value. You can't learn the correct value. And so you need to have a policy about what you do there. In many cases, we would make those values missing in the analysis data set. A great practice when you're finished then is to document what you checked, what you found, and what you did about it. And that could serve as an annex to the survey report. If you have questions about any of these steps, let us know, and we'll document these things and show an example in even more detail in the following videos. Thank you.